Hey guys, welcome to the channel. In the previous video, we learned about breaking down the actions a hacker performs into 10 stages, so we can build a systematic approach in our workflow. To make efficient use of the large amount of information we will learn in cybersecurity, it is very important how to manage all that information, so that later when I ask you to tackle a hacking challenge as part of the course, you can, like experts, pull out your precise toolbox for each stage of the task. If you do not manage the study material properly, you will get to a point where it is hard to handle the huge amount of content, and you will feel very confused when you try to take on a hacking challenge. So do not underestimate orderly, methodical documentation. It is critical to our success. In this lesson, I will teach you step by step in an orderly and methodical way how to manage all the content we learn. If you are new here, I want us to get acquainted. You are with me in a cyber course. I am Avi Sevilla, and I am glad you found this channel. In this course, I will take you hand in hand from zero until you become experts. Along the way, we will go through adventures together and get excited executing cyber attacks, from low-level cyber challenges to challenges at insane difficulty levels. I have lots of interesting and fascinating material to teach you. If you are into it, subscribe to the channel right now and hit the bell so you do not miss the next video. It is completely free. You can cancel the subscription anytime you want, and it also helps me know I am creating tutorials that help you. Okay, back to the point. What do we need to do to manage what we learn properly? First, we need software to manage the content. But do not worry, we do not need to install anything on the computer. There are many companies that offer online content management solutions for free. Of course, there is an option to upgrade your subscription with them to get advanced features, but those are mostly features relevant to business owners. So for us, the free plan gives us everything we need and much more. So as I said, there are many companies offering content management solutions. But for simplicity, we will focus on just one of them, called Notion. Of course, if you prefer to use other products or you already use other products today, there is no reason not to use them, as long as they meet some basic needs that we will see in a moment. So let's get started. Okay, first we will go to the Notion website to sign up. You can search on Google for the word Notion and choose the first result. Here we need to click Login. And now you can either sign up from scratch or choose Continue with Google. That basically connects with my user on Google. I will choose my user. And I will approve it. Now it asks me what use I intend to make of Notion. So I choose for personal use. I click Continue. Now it puts here all kinds of automatic templates. Just click Clear Templates so we can start everything from scratch cleanly. Now let's change a few settings. First, we will go to Settings. From here, we will go to Workspace Settings. And we will give the workspace a name. Let's call it Cyber. We can also change the icon if we want. Let's put here a picture of someone with a laptop. Let's say this. And update. The workspace is our area where we manage all the content. We created an area called Cyber, and inside it we will manage all the content. Now we can add various pages that manage content. For example, let's click here on Add a Page. We will name the first page Books Summary. Various summaries of books I like to make. We will just add another page. We will call it My Hobbies. Now look, you can write all kinds of things inside this. Yeah, A, B, 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 you can write whatever we want here. What is nice here is that you can also manage a hierarchy of pages. Here you see the pages on the left side. Let's remove this Getting Started page. Excellent. We basically have two pages we added here, and we can add subpages inside them. How does that work? Suppose I want to add another page here now. I type /page, enter, and basically add a subpage. Let's call it Book A, for example. Notice that you can see the hierarchy of the pages here. If I click here on the book summary, I see a link here to the Book A page. I can do the same, do /page, and add Book B. Inside Book B, I can write whatever I want. And I go back. In Book Summary, I see all the pages. Now you can also see the hierarchy of pages if you click the triangle here. So you can clearly see the hierarchy that inside Book Summary there are Book A and Book B. We are now learning various features that exist in Notion, which will serve us, as we will soon see, for managing all the content. So for now, we learned how to add pages and subpages, and now we will learn another feature called linking to pages. For example, if I am now inside Book B, and I am writing various things, and I want to reference something written on the Book A page, I can do link to page. I select that, and then it lets me choose the pages I have here. So I will call it, say, Book A. Here it found it. I mark it. Now note, this is just a link. It does not add a new page. When I click it, it jumps to Book A. So I can add pages and subpages, and I can also create links between different pages. Once something gets a link to its page, you can see it says there is a backlink, and if I click it, I can see who points to Book A, which was Book B. Another nice thing when we write content, we can also manage lists. For example, AAA, BBB, CCC. When you type an asterisk and a space, it opens bullets, so you can make all kinds of lists. Another thing, you can divide all the content into headings, or what is called headers. Say now I will do /H1 here, meaning header 1. I can write chapter 1 here. This is the first chapter of the book, and now I can write whatever I want inside. You can also do the header with this sign with a hash and a space. Hash and space is a shortcut for heading 1. Here I write chapter 2. Now you can also make subheadings. For example, there is also header 2. I do /H2, so it is heading 2. So under chapter 2, you can call it, for example, subject A. Here too, you can use 2 hashes and a space and call it subject B. And under each one, write the content. Next, when summarizing a lot of material here, the page can be very long and very hard to navigate. There is an option to make a toggle, meaning if I do /toggle here, I can write subject A here, and then under it, I press tab, and then I write things under it. I can, for example, write A, E, B, B, C, C, C here. And even though the content is very long, I click the triangle and it simply hides it. I can expand and collapse. And this way I can manage a lot of content in an organized way and avoid exposing an overload of content that hurts order by showing only the content I need. You can also combine the toggle with the header. That is, if I want to make a toggle on chapter 2, then I do /toggle. And now I also add a heading by using 2 hashes followed by a space. Then I write a title, such as chapter 2. That way we have a title that also opens and closes the content under it. There is a shortcut to make a toggle using a triangle bracket. I type the triangle bracket followed by a space and it creates the toggle automatically. If, for example, I want to use shortcuts to make both toggle and header 1, then I type triangle space hash space, and then we have a heading 1 that also expands and collapses. Under it, I can, for example, make another toggle of heading 2. Then closing heading 1 hides heading 2 as well. And I can also open and close heading 2 separately. This will help us manage all the material we will see in an organized way, and I will explain exactly how to use it. Another thing you can do is dragging. Each line here is an object. I can grab the object and, for example, move it here. I can take this object and put it here under heading 2. The ability to drag is very flexible. Now I will show you something else very useful. We saw there is plain text and there is a list. Many times we want to document code. For that, we can type /code. Then a section opens where we can write code. For example, I will write something in C++. Include its IO stream. After or before we write the code, we can set the programming language we are writing. Because I wrote code in C++, I will choose the C++ language and see what happens. The code colors change according to the language I chose. If, for example, I now want to write code in shell, then I will choose shell here. Unlike C++, now in shell, the hash means a comment in code. Therefore, the code colors changed and everything is gray, which represents a comment. If, for example, I write a shell command like export path equals home evi path, then you can see it colors it with colors appropriate for a shell command. If I switch the language selection back to C++, then you will see the colors of include become correct, but the export command is not highlighted correctly. Another option we have in a code block is handling very long code. For the example, I will intentionally write long code. Now it forces me to scroll the code to see all of it. That is less convenient. To solve this, you can turn on wrap code. That makes it so that if the code is longer than the line, it wraps it to another line. Sometimes that is also less convenient since it splits a long code line into several lines, and that can be confusing. There are two solutions that can help in that case. One, so that the long code line fits on one line without scrolling and without splitting the line, you can increase the page width. Click the three dots here and choose full width. Then you can see how the long code line fits on one line. But sometimes even that is not enough. What I like to do when I have a long command is use special symbols that allow the command to work even when it is split into several lines. For example, if I use the Hydra command, let's change the selected code language to shell. To go down a line in the command, I can write a \, and that allows continuing the command on the next line. The shell will treat it as a single line, so we will add the parameter _username to the command, which means the user that Hydra will use. You do not need to know what Hydra is right now, I am just showing an example. Then I go down another line, so that for each parameter I create a new line, which makes the code line more readable. And so on, you can add more and more parameters on additional lines. What we saw lets us take one long code line and split its display into several lines, but in a convenient way, not just splitting by character length, but one line per parameter. Another important thing I want to show you, when we usually write a long command, each time we reuse it, we often change the values of the parameters passed to it. Some parameters remain fixed, and some are dynamic and change. For example, the parameter username. In each attack, I will use a different username. What I like to do is use variables before the command itself. For example, export username equals myoser. Then in the command, instead of writing the username, I use the variable. I write $open curly braces, write the variable username, and close curly braces. Then when I run the export, the username variable is saved in the environment, and when I run the command, it knows to replace the username variable with the value I provided. Then every time I want to run the command, I just need to update all the variables that are relevant and dynamic, and then I run the command. Sometimes you do not need to create a full code block. Sometimes we want to write a short command that does not take up much space. We can, for example, write some short command. Then we select it. And then you can either use the shortcut CTRL-E or click the triangle brackets icon to format the command as an inline code line. That creates a gray background that makes the text look like code. Even when I write a folder path, I like to use this styling. For example, I say save the file into /home/av/passwords.txt. I select that whole file path part and press Ctrl E, and then the path gets a nice style. I use a code block when my code is a bit longer. Even for a single command, I also use a code block if it is a bit long with parameters. Another thing, sometimes when you run a command, you want to document its output here. So you can also create a code block here, and inside it, you can write the command output, which is sometimes very long. After that, there are cases where you want to mark a certain word from the big output to emphasize it. What I like to do is not settle for bold alone. If you click the styling icon, there is an option to set a background for the text. For example, yellow background. The selected text gets a yellow background. The shortcut to do this is CTRL Shift H. For example, I will mark this text, then I press CTRL Shift H, and the text becomes yellow highlighted. This way, if you have long output from a command and you want to mark things that are relevant for the next stages of the attack, you simply highlight them. Another thing, sometimes we want to document links to various links on the internet. For example, we found a site that has information and we want to document it. What we will do is write some description for the link, for example, the word link, then select it, and then either press the shortcut Ctrl K or click the link icon shown here. When I click it, I can enter here the URL of the site I want to record. Enter. Then the word that appears is the word link that I wrote earlier, but when you hover over it, the URL appears and you can click it, which will take us to that web address. One last thing, after we have a lot of learning content added here on this page, we can search. For example, if you do not remember the parameters of the Hydra command, then you can type the word Hydra in search and see all the pages with that word. And by clicking one of the results, you will be taken directly to that area of the page where the word appears. This way you can easily locate texts you had from previous notes. Now that we learned the basic tools to use Notion, let's delete everything we did and start from the beginning, but this time for our course. This time, we will see how we manage the information we learn in the lessons. When I click the three dots shown next to the page name here, I can delete. That will delete the whole page. Note that everything deleted goes to the trash, meaning what you deleted is not lost. You'll be able to see it here. What we deleted will arrive in the trash shortly. It takes a few seconds until it is moved there, but if you try again in a minute or two, you will see all the pages we deleted here. Now I want us to talk about how we manage the content. There are 4 main pages we will use. We will call the first page Learning. Here we will document everything we learn in this course or in other courses you are taking. All the knowledge you accumulate, you want to manage it under the Learning page. The next page we will call Toolkit. The toolkit is your tool set. When you are in an attack process, you do not waste time going through all your study material. You want to quickly know how to use specific tools at certain stages of an attack and not get lost in so much study material. So the toolkit is a more precise concentration of everything that was in learning, but much more concise for the attack. And I will explain later how we do that. The third page is Challenges. These are hacking challenges we do during learning, in which we sharpen our skills. After we learn, we want to test and apply our abilities in different challenges. We manage the challenges here, where each challenge will have its own page, as we will see shortly. The fourth and last page is Templates, meaning page templates. We will see that when we write a new page to document a lesson or an attack tool, we do not want to start building the page from scratch, but we can use a specific template, a certain template that will help and guide us on exactly what information to document. We will see this in a moment, so it will be clearer. So let's start with the first page, Learning. As I said, here we keep all the knowledge we learn. So there are two types of information we learn. Either we do it as part of a course. I like to make a toggle here, set it to heading 1, and write courses here, under which there will be materials we document as part of courses. At the same time, sometimes there are things we find on the internet unrelated to a specific course, and it is important to document them by topic. I call this resources. Under courses, we will devote one page to each course. For example, if you are taking a course that teaches you to program in PHP, we will do /page and call it PHP programming. So that is one course. Let's go back so we have the PHP course. If we want to do another course, such as what we are learning in this course, then we will call it penetration testing. And that is the second course. In other words, we added two courses here. Now, inside each course, we also manage pages. Each page is one lesson on some topic. For example, the first lesson we will have in PHP is working with variables. Here you write all the content, and I go back. That is the first lesson. Now we will add a second lesson called conditions and loops, for the sake of example. So here is the course, and under the course there are topics. Sometimes the courses are very large and also contain categories by topic. That is, you can divide the lessons by categories. In that case, for example, we will go to penetration testing. Suppose I have several categories. So what I will do is make each category with a toggle and header 1. And I will give the category name. For example, Introduction to Pen Testing. That is one category. And suppose we have another category called Web Hacking. And under each category, we will place the lesson pages. For example, under Introduction, let's write the lessons we already learned. We will do /page to add a new page. What is penetration testing? And I go back. And the second lesson, the hacker methodology. This way, each lesson has its own page. We will do the same for the web hacking category. For example, we will write page here. The lesson name is Discover Web Pages. So this is what a course divided into categories by different topics looks like. Now let's go back to learning. That was about the courses. Regarding resources, each resource will also have its own page. For example, I will make a page here, and I will make a resource called nmap, which basically means I sat down, learned about the nmap command, researched it, how to use it, etc. I can document here everything I learned. And that is it. So we have courses, and we have specific lessons, specific topics we learn. Now, what do we write inside a single page specifically? Let's take penetration testing, for example. Inside it, there is a lesson called Discover Web Pages. What is the format inside each lesson? So here too, we should keep a fixed standard. What should it be? First, I want to save the link to the content, where I learned it from, where I got it from. If it is a YouTube channel, then there will be a link to YouTube here. So as we said, click link, and you can do Ctrl-K on it and write here. For example, if it is YouTube, we will enter the appropriate address. You can simply paste the URL of the link here. After that, I make a toggle with header 1. I call it full content. And I will have another called summary, which is basically the summary of the content. In full content, I will want to put everything I am learning. Sometimes, if my source is not a YouTube video, but an actual web page from which I learn, I can copy and paste, meaning select all the content, copy it, and paste it here in full. And summary is a concise summary of the full content so that whenever I want to recall how to discover web pages, I can quickly read the summary without needing to read all the full content again slowly. And if that is still not enough, like if the summary I wrote is not clear to me, only then I go back to read the full content. But the idea is that once we make the summary, we also remember the material better. And in the future, we will not need to read everything again, but go to the concise section. For example, if here I learn about the fuff command and how to do discovery using this tool, here in the summary, I will ultimately want the command, what it looks like. You do not need to understand the command right now. It is just to show you the principle of how to document. Here I have a summary of the things. Of course, it is not just the command. Sometimes there is a lot of text, and then I also need to summarize topics. So I can summarize the different topics and so on. Now, for example, in this example, this is an example that attacks using a dictionary file, which basically contains a list of many names of web pages that are potential to find. So I can also add here, for example, list of dictionary files. And here I can write a command that brings me a list of all the files I have in dictionary files. Because it is a command, as I said, I like to format it. I press Ctrl E here, and then it really gives it a command format. Excellent. So that is the structure of the lesson. Link, full content, and summary. That is it. So now we finished the learning section. By the way, the page structure, when we talk about templates, we will create a template for each lesson, and then there will be, as I wrote, the link, the summary, and the full course. And essentially, we can duplicate that each time for a new course, and then we will have a template to put the information into. We will get to that shortly. The next step, after we finished learning, is the toolkit. Before I detail this here, it is important to say that many people have already built themselves various toolkits, and they are published on the internet and seemingly invite you to use their toolkit. Do not do that. First, I will show you an example of such a toolkit. For example, type hack tricks in Google. You have here a site that gives a lot of information about hacking. Let's say, for example, we go to network services pen testing. What do we see? For every open port, there is an explanation here of different attack options. For example, SMB. I go into it. So here you can see it explains about the port, what it means, and it gives various commands and examples, how to perform enumeration for this port, how to do exploitation, and so on. So there are all kinds of examples here you can read endlessly. It is like that for everything. This toolkit is convenient for learning new things. If, say, you encounter a port you have never touched and you want to know what you can do with it, then this is good. But for a toolkit for yourselves, a toolset you will have for attacks, it is better that it be a kit you built for yourselves because then you will know it much better. You will know what is inside and you can make customizations there that suit only you. And you will not dump a lot of content there that will make you get lost. It is important that it be tailored to what you learned. And if it has exactly what you learned, you will be able to use it much more easily and quickly. Slowly, as your experience and hacking grow, you will expand your toolkit until it grows. Therefore, it is not smart to take a toolkit someone else made and use it. So every time we learn a new lesson together, you need to take that knowledge, and besides documenting it in learning at the summary level, you also need to add it to the toolkit in the appropriate place. So let's see how the toolkit page is structured. If you remember, in the previous lesson we talked about the 10 stages the hacker goes through. Now we will build categories here according to all those stages. Let's recall the stages a bit. The first stage was external recon, where we collect information about our target without making intensive contact with the target, but trying to stay as stealthy as possible so they do not see and notice that we are collecting the information. The second stage was enumeration, where we are already scanning and doing much more active actions against the target. The third stage was exploitation, which is the initial breach into the server after, in the previous stage, we found possible entry points. Here we exploit them and get inside. The fourth stage was privilege escalation, where we upgrade our permissions from a regular user to a more privileged user. In the next stage, we have persistence, where we try to create a convenient entry for future times, so we will not need to go through all the stages of the hack up to that point. After that, we have internal recon, whose purpose was to scan from within the server to reach and identify sensitive information and additional areas in the internal network. The next stage was lateral movement, whose goal is to do exploitation of additional servers in the internal network, that is, to expand our attack surface. After that, there was the stage of action on objective, meaning actually performing the actions on our target. And next we had covering tracks, meaning hiding evidence of our hack. And finally, there was reporting, which is basically the report we give to the business with all the vulnerabilities we identified and recommended remediations, as we saw. Beyond that, I like to add another category called general helpers. Here we will put things that help us throughout the attack and not necessarily at a specific point or stage. For example, dictionaries. These are files that contain lists of various things. It could be passwords, users, and so on. So I create a subcategory here. I will make it a header 2 called dictionaries. And here each dictionary will have its page. For example, passwords dictionary. And then here I can write, say, URL that points to the location where I can download the passwords file or where the passwords file is on my computer and so on. Let's go back. What else could be here? There could also be various tools here. For example, if I want to know how to transfer files between a Windows server and Linux, or between Windows and Windows, inside the network or outside the network. How do I do that? So I can write another page here, meaning a new page, which explains how to transfer the files. For example, on one side, set up a web server in Python. On the other side, fetch it with an HTTP request, and so on. There are various different methods here. Let's go back. Great. Now, in external recon, if you remember, there was both passive and active information gathering. So I will make a subcategory called passive external recon and active external recon. And under these, I will place pages by topic. For example, in passive external recon, we have the whois command, which brings us information such as who registered a certain domain. Again, you do not need to understand the meaning of what I am saying right now, because right now I am only teaching you how to organize the material. We will learn and explain each thing in depth. Note that the toolkit is built from 2 layers. The first layer is making the structure, dividing the various topics into categories and subcategories. And the other layer is that in each subcategory, there are specific pages where the page itself contains the content for how to do what we need to do. So let's continue to active external recon. Here, for example, there can be a page that talks about recon for websites, meaning I am not scanning it aggressively. That is not related to external recon. Aggressively, we said, is already in the enumeration stage, but I do collect various information about the site, like which technologies it uses and so on. So that is called website recon. So let's add such a page. And by the way, inside the page, because there are various tools, there will be subpages here. For example, we will add a page called Wapalizer, which is basically a plugin on the browser that gives you all kinds of information about the site and searches for the technologies used there so that later you have more information on how to break in. But again, you do not need to understand this right now. I just want to show you the structure. So I go back here. In the enumeration stage, I want to divide the categories by who am I scanning. That is, if I have an IP address of a certain server, then I can scan a server. So I will make a subcategory here called server. After I scan the server, I have certain ports, I have services that are on the server, so I can run scans on them too. So I will call it services. And each service can actually host behind it several types of applications. For example, if it is a website, then the service on port 80 of the website, the web server behind it, can host a page that runs on a WordPress platform. WordPress is an application that is a framework for building the site. So for WordPress, there are specific tools for performing enumeration that fit WordPress. So in addition to services, we will write apps. Now, for example, under server, one of the scans I want to do is check open ports. So I will add a page and I will call it, for example, scan open ports. And then here I can make subpages, for example, use Nmap. So I will make a page called Nmap, and there I will have explanations on how to use Nmap. So I will go back. So as you can see, we have enumeration for server. Also for services, for each port, there is a service behind it, and the scan of each service is different in nature, and there are different tools and scripts for scanning each service separately. So here we will want to document for each port, or rather for each service, how to scan it. Since there are default ports that the services usually sit on, I will arrange this here by port number. For example, I will create a page for port 25 and port 26, where there is a service called SMTP. Again, we are not learning what that means right now. And inside it, I will make a page, for example, for SMTP password attack. So that is an example, but there can be additional things to add for SMTP, various additional scans. And then I go back, and let's say now we have another port, say port 80. The port 80 hosts websites. So I write here 80 and web server. And here too, there are tons of things to scan. As you can see, I also sorted this by port number, so it will be easy for me to find it in the list. Another thing, sometimes there is a port that represents the exact same service, just in a secure configuration. For example, port 465 is the SMTPS service, which is essentially just like the SMTP service, except the communication is secure, but the service is the same. So in this case, to support both ports, we will also create a separate page for the secure configuration. Only this time, instead of writing all the content inside and duplicating it, we can use link to page. Do you remember that we learned about this? So I choose link to page, then I type SMTP, and select the page I already created. When I enter the link, it will direct me to the page I created earlier. This is how I manage services that have duplicates across ports. Only I do not enter all the content twice, but create a link from the secure ports page to the non-secure ports page. There is also a secure port for the web server service, which we will also learn later, and there too I will make a link to the page for port 80. The third part is apps. Apps are basically applications. For example, behind the web server, meaning behind the organization site, various applications can sit. For example, a WordPress platform can sit there, as I mentioned earlier. So I will do /page here, which creates a new page. And I will write enumerating WordPress. So that is the enumeration part. Now we can collapse this so it is more convenient. And we are now inside exploitation. The first category will be vulnerability databases, which are databases of vulnerabilities known for certain applications. For example, if we identified that the client has a certain application in a certain version, we can go into the database and check whether there are vulnerabilities already known for that version so we can use them to break in. So a very well-known site, for example, is CVE Details. On this site, I will show you CVE Details. You can enter it. First, you can copy the link. I copy it, and I come back here and I will write URL link. I select the link, press Ctrl K, Ctrl V, paste it, select it. That is it. I have a link to it. Here you can search by different products. If, say, I want to check a certain product, I can search here, and then I search for its version. And then when I enter, it tells me how many vulnerabilities. Say I will enter this, for example. So here are the vulnerabilities. I click, and it gives the vulnerability here. And there are details here about that specific vulnerability. So we are not learning this right now. We will get to it later. But that is about databases. This is vulnerability databases. Other repositories we have are not what the vulnerabilities are, but how we also exploit those vulnerabilities. That is, a repository of scripts that help us carry out the hack. So I call this exploits databases. Here, for example, there is a tool called Searchsploit. We will also learn about it later. Great. Next, whenever we manage to use a certain exploit and we have experience with it, we will want to document it. So I will call this apps exploits. For example, WordPress. Here, I will want to put the application as a third header. Say I will write WordPress here, and under it, I can put pages. For example, execute command from admin panel. That is, if we now got admin access to the portal, how we can make the portal run a script on the server and create, for example, a reverse sale back to us, so we have access inside the server. We will also learn this in depth later. Now, the fourth and last category is called website exploits. In fact, website exploits is a special case within app exploits. The reason I separated it is because it is very common, so I gave it its own category. But in principle, it logically belongs inside the app exploits area. It is just that there is an app type called website exploits. Here, for example, we will have SQL injection. We will learn about it too. We will also have command injection and much more. This will be a very substantial category in which we will learn many things. One last thing we will add here is a category called exploitation helpers, which means certain aids for the exploit, for the breach, that are relevant to all the other categories. We will see an example in a moment. For example, we will add a page called reverse shell. The reverse shell is a type of payload I pass to the server. That is, some code I want to run on the server I am attacking, and when that code runs, it creates access to me, meaning to my attack machine, so I can communicate between the server I attacked and the attacking machine, and I will want to run that same code regardless of how I performed the exploit, whether I did it through a WordPress application or through SQL injection. No matter how I got there, in the end, in some way I reached the server, I will want to plant the reverse shell on the server. Therefore, this is something called helpers. It is general at the level of all exploitation, and it is not specific to a particular exploit. The next category is privilege escalation, where after we get initial access to the server, we want to upgrade our permissions. Here we will basically separate between different operating systems. For example, Windows. And for example, Linux. And the reason is that each operating system has its configurations and its management method. So the ways to perform privilege escalation from a regular user to a higher user will be different between each operating system. Okay, I will stop here. We got the idea. We will continue these things later. These are much more advanced topics that we will reach much later. So at least we set up the structure in the first topics we will reach in the coming lessons. But it is important to note there is no law carved in stone that forces this structure. I made these categories according to what is convenient for me. Someone else might decide to make changes so it fits and is more convenient for them. But the idea, what is important, is that with this toolkit, the moment you need to perform a certain action, you will know how to find it quickly. That is the goal of the toolkit, to give you quick locating there and how to do it. Now, what will be written on each specific page inside the toolkit. So let's see, let's go in and do an example. Say inside enumeration under the web server service, we will add a page called Discover Web Pages, which are basically tools for how we can find additional pages on the site that we do not usually see when we browse the site. What are called hidden pages. So suppose there are several commands that do this. So let's say we will make a page for the fuff command. And here we will have 3 headers. The first header, I will call it Learning. Here, my goal is to create links to other pages from the Learning category. Basically, in Learning there is the full learning of the thing, and in the toolkit it is the summary. So I do want to have a link. If now in the summary of the command I cannot understand and remember why I did it this way, then I want to make a page link here. The top. For example, Discover Web Pages. Here, inside Learning, we had Discover Web Pages. So from here, I basically have a link to Learning, where the full study material is in case I need it. Another thing is Manual. What is Manual? The manual is the documentation, meaning all the options you can use with the ff command. To see it, we will write, say, in Google, man fuff. Here the details are much broader. I see all the different options to run the command. What each parameter means. So you see there are a lot of options here. So I can take this link, for example, and put it here. We will write link, select it, do Ctrl-K, paste. We have here the manual for the fuff command, and if we want to use it for more advanced things besides scanning pages, we have all the information about it here. The next step is the usage. The usage is a summary of how to use the command. We always need, when we use the toolkit, to go to the usage section, because here we need to perform what we want. The part above is only in case what is written here does not satisfy us. Either we forgot what it means and we want to recall from Learning, or we are looking for additional parameters that we did not write. Then we can go to the manual and see if there are additional options. So in usage, I will write the actual command, how to use it. I can simply copy data from the Learning page specific to the command, but in the end, there will be, for example, fuff here and all the other parameters. Now, another important thing about the names of the pages. Do not call it just fuff. This fuff, its meaning here in this scope is for Discover Web Pages, because you can also use it for other things. So when we do this later, for example, AA/link to some page, if it says only fuff here, we will not understand the context. We will not understand the meaning. You need to write the fuff with all its meaning in terms of the context it is used in. That way the pages will be much clearer. So everything you see here, this template, the learning, the manual, and the usage, we will move into the templates page we have here. We will essentially need to build a template that has all these parts. Then we add a new page in our toolkit, we copy it from the template, and then we fill in the missing sections. The next part is challenges. These are the challenges we do that sharpen our abilities in learning cyber. So I like to divide it into categories of easy and medium and hard and of second, which is the craziest level. I will just make them all header 1 here. And then each challenge will have its own page. For example, I make a page here and we will name the challenge. For example, Year of the Dog. And then here will be all the stages of the challenge. Specifically, what is inside the challenge requires a separate lesson to learn how to manage a whole attack end-to-end, how to save the attack vectors. We will not learn all these things right now. We will build a template for this later. But for now, just know there will be such a template. And then there will be different challenges here divided by different categories. In the templates page, there will be 3 templates we will need. The first template, I will call it Template Toolkit Page, which basically here we said there is learning. We have manual, and we have usage. That is all. Every time you create a new page inside the toolkit, you simply take this, select it, copy with Ctrl+C, go to the toolkit. If you want to add here, you click plus, Ctrl+V. The template goes in, you come and update its name to what it should be, and fill in the missing details. This is the first template. The second template, as I said, is for challenges. So I write template challenge. And here we will learn later what to do. There is another template for learning that we will create later. Okay, friends, before I give you the homework, I want to summarize briefly what we did. First, we learned the basic actions required of us to use the Notion product for our needs. Second, we saw how we should manage study materials, so they serve us as an aid going forward. We focused on 4 main categories, which are 1, learning, where we document study materials from our tutorials or other tutorials. Toolkit, a tool set that takes the study material and refines it into a different categorical structure aligned to the 10 hacking stages. 3, challenges, documentation of hacking challenges we will do together later on. And finally, 4, templates, page templates that will help and guide us on how to manage the content, so that what we learned does not stay theoretical. It is very important that at the end of every tutorial, you must document, which means updating both the first category, learning, and the second category, toolkit. If you do not do that, you will not be able to hold on to the amount of material over time. And if you do, you will gain several times over. You also review the material actively because you write and summarize it, so you will remember it better, and it will be a valuable aid to you going forward. The homework I want to give you now is simple. Do everything we went through together today yourselves. Prepare the infrastructure for documenting the upcoming tutorials. And so you do not miss the upcoming tutorials, subscribe to the channel right now and click the bell. When you click the bell, you can choose for it to notify you about every new content I upload. If the video helped you, I would appreciate it if you could give back with 2 small things that will help me grow the channel. First, like the video. B, write a comment below, whether it is a question, a request, or just to give me feedback if the video helped you. Thank you very much, friends, and see you in the next video.